Hello, it's Hugh here from the News for Scotland team, and this is part 3 in our mini-series profiling the parties who are standing in Scotland for the UK election. We already have 2 features here on YouTube on Alba and the Conservatives, so today in alphabetical order, it's the turn of the Green Party. Now, the Scottish Greens has its roots in 1978 in the UK-wide Ecology Party. This became the Green Party and its Scottish branch set up as a separate party here in 1990. The return of the Scottish Parliament with its PR voting system gave the Greens their first elected lawmaker when Robin Harper became the first Green to be elected to any parliament in the UK. Today, the Scottish Greens have 7 voting MSPs plus the Parliament's presiding officer Alison Johnston. PR voting in the Scottish Council elections means that the Greens have several councillors in many of Scotland's cities, including Glasgow and Edinburgh. In the Highlands, Rory Winter had been the first UK Green to be elected anywhere when he won a seat on the Highlands Regional Council in 1990. As well as campaigning on climate and environmental issues, the Scottish Greens also support Scottish independence and have been active in supporting trans rights in the Scottish Parliament. They spoke up for Nicola Sturgeon's controversial GRR, Gender Self-ID Bill in 2022. Its joint leader Patrick Harvie saying trans women are women and trans men are men. Robin Harper, who also doesn't support Scottish independence, has now left the party, telling Holyrood magazine recently that there was a chilling atmosphere of censure in the Scottish Party where it's difficult to have a reasonable discussion on the trans issue. Harper's apparently unacceptable opinions were reported to the party's Conduct and Complaints Committee this year under a conference decision that transphobic or trans-exclusionary individuals of any kind are not welcome as members of the Scottish Green Party. Harper has now resigned, but is still a passionate champion of the environment and has called for the party leadership to be replaced. Earlier this month, it was reported that several other party members have also been expelled under this policy. Now, you could get the impression that the main aim of the Scottish Greens is, in spite of their name, to campaign for trans rights, but they haven't forgotten about the environmental emergency. If we look here at the landing page of their website, we see no mention of gender issues at all. Instead, these are the sort of priorities you'd expect of a Green Party anywhere. They want Scotland to be nuclear free. After all, we have plenty of renewables, and they are proud of their performance on transport, ending peak rail fares and bringing in free young persons travel on the buses. They also support an independent Scottish Republic. This UK election, however, will be difficult for the Scottish Greens. Under a first past the post election, they're very unlikely to make the sort of impact which Caroline Lucas managed in Brighton in 2010. A seat which she has now defended successfully 3 times, although she's retiring this time. For the Scottish Greens to win an MP at all their votes would have to move into the same town. They polled about 28,000 votes in total in 2019, so if they all move to Glasgow G12, they'd be in. The Greens do, however, intend to put up more candidates than ever in this year's election, including for all 6 seats in Glasgow. This may take votes mainly away from the SNP. The 2 parties are still recovering from the former First Minister Humza Yousaf suddenly throwing the Greens joint leaders out of government in April this year, an event which ultimately led to his own resignation. Still, the Green Party is focused on climate change, and here's the other joint leader, Lorna Slater, speaking in our Parliament on the lack of progress on climate targets.
There are 2 things that the events of the last few weeks have made clear to me. One is that our planet is currently en route to a climate catastrophe. And 2 is that there is no majority in this Parliament that supports action to prevent that. This is a devastating diagnosis for our future and is especially terrifying for our children and generations to come. The Guardian last week published an article showing that 77% of climate scientists believe we'll get a global temperature rise of more than 2.5 degrees by the year 2100. That's only 75 years away. A child born today will experience this future. Many other children will be killed by this future. 2.5 or 3 degrees doesn't seem like very much, does it? Under the Paris Agreement, governments around the world said that they would do what it takes to keep global heating below 1.5 degrees. They haven't. But this wasn't because 1.5 degrees was safe. No. As we rapidly approach 1.5 degrees, we can already see what it means. Ask the farmers who were flooded out last year, the people globally affected by wildfires and droughts. Coastal communities and islanders are watching their land disappear before their eyes. As we get towards and past 1.5 degrees of heating, the harms accelerate. Bad gets worse. Devastating becomes deadly. If all of that seems a bit distant and arbitrary, like it might happen to someone else, think again. There's an excellent tool online that anyone can use at coastal.climatecentral.org that shows where sea levels are expected to be by 2050, only 25 years away. In my region, the water comes all the way up to Leith Links and covers the town centre of Musselburgh.
So that was Lorna Slater. The Scottish Greens, however, maybe look unsure as to what the main purpose is. Are they, as that clip suggests, focused on keeping our climate targets on track? Or do they want to be the main champions of the transgender politics, which has caused so much heat already in the Scottish Parliament? This April, Dr. Hilary Cass, author of the Cass Report into Youth Gender Identity Services in England, was invited to our Parliament to the committee where her advice and knowledge was well received. Not, however, by many organisations campaigning here on the trans issue, nor by the leaders of the Scottish Green Party. On that point, here's Patrick Harvie in the Scottish Parliament.
And a Tory party here in the Scottish Parliament now targeting LGBT Youth Scotland, an organisation that we should all be proud of. And speeches here today, just as deplorable, some of them, including from those who have voted against LGBT people's human rights at every opportunity and who've even supported restrictions on reproductive rights and freedoms as well. And what all of this generates outside of politics is a wave of hostility and prejudice, the likes of which I have never experienced in my many years working and campaigning on LGBT people's human rights. I regret, Presiding Officer, that the only amendment reflecting on this political context was not selected for debate today. The Greens will support the Scottish Government amendment. We believe it's an improvement, somewhat, to the motion, and feel the same about the Labour amendment. But neither will be enough to make the amended motion supportable. We will oppose it, just as we will try as best we can, even if we are left alone in Scottish politics, in summoning up the courage to oppose the toxic culture war, which has started elsewhere and which I fear may be coming to Scotland.
Thank you, Mr Harvie.
That was an angry Patrick Harvie arguing against the findings of the Cass review. The motion he opposed there was by Megan Gallagher on the 8th of May, and it welcomed the Cass report, recognising it as a valid scientific document and calling on the Scottish Government to implement the recommendations of the report as applicable to the NUS in Scotland. The motion was passed with amendments, but without the support of the Scottish Green Party. In rejecting this well-researched and thorough report, isn't Patrick Harvie contributing to the toxic culture which he complained about? And why did he single out the controversial LBGTYS organisation, a charity founded to work for young people between the ages of 13 and 25, but which has now started selling its training services to Scottish primary schools? Mr Harvie's tone at the end of that speech didn't sound like a voice from the political mainstream. The Scottish Greens are part of a worldwide movement. Environmental damage, of course, affects all of us, no matter what country we live in. As we prepare this programme on the 28th of May, the European Greens are getting ready for the European Parliament elections from the 6th to the 9th of June. Greens are quite interchangeable. If a Green supporter moved to another country, they would feel perfectly at home in the new Green Party. And we at News for Scotland will report on those EU elections. We have a special feature coming up next week. And of course, we will update you on the Scottish Greens campaign as they argue for your vote on the 4th of July. Thanks for watching. And if you're new to News for Scotland, so are we. We just started on YouTube a few weeks ago. We're a not-for-profit media company based in Glasgow, aiming to bring a Scottish-based view to the big political choices facing our country. We'll also cover arts, theatre, music, and anything else we think you might be interested in. If you like what we're doing, it helps us if you would click on the like button below, and it helps us even more when viewers select to subscribe to our channel. So please have a look for that subscribe button, and it really would be helpful if you click on it. It doesn't cost anything, but it helps us.